Welcome to Infertility and Me podcast, a show that amplifies diverse stories about the struggles of infertility and fertility in a safe space. Our goal is to normalize fertility stories that validate, give hope, and create a community where no one is left silently suffering. Coming on to the show and speaking to us about your story and journey to motherhood, especially being an older mom. I'm not going to use the other term. I don't like that term too much. The medical term.
Geriatric.
Yes, I hate it with a passion. Okay, so ridiculous. But thank you, dear, again for coming on the show and offering your story to others to encourage. Because there's a lot of women out there like that now, in that age range, trying to conceive and holding on to hope, baby.
Yep. It's so important. Thank you so much for everything that you do. It's so important. Representation is so important, and hearing other people's stories really does help.
Yeah, it definitely does. And with infertility, it can be so heavy. And so I try to keep the show as lighthearted as I can, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So let me start with an icebreaker question that I normally ask everyone, and it's how did you meet your spouse? How did you meet Puppy?
My husband and I met in a bar.
Yes.
Very
Ooh.
old-fashioned. We met in a bar. I guess that's old-fashioned. I don't know. I don't know what the kids do these days, but we were kind of in two circles of friends that were joining together. So we met at a bar and we're friends for a little over a year. He had a girlfriend. I had a boyfriend at the time. We were friends for a little over a year, and then we had both broken up with our other significant others, and our friends were like, "Oh, you and Sean, you're going to get together." And I was like, "No way." And then here we are, married 6 years.
Prove them wrong. Prove them freaking wrong. Yes. And so, what kind of person would you describe yourself as? Like an optimist, a worrier,
I
all
would
of that in
say
between?
I'm a realist. I
Okay.
am pretty emotional, but I am a realist. Um, I think that the process that we've been through with infertility has changed that some. Although I think also having a supportive husband, he's very grounded. And so he's kind of helped me to just to slow down a little bit and to not worry so much. Although, again, through the process, I've gained a lot of anxieties, but
Yeah.
he's been a great grounding force for me.
And so, how long were you guys married before you started trying to conceive for your toddler that you have now?
Oh gosh, it wasn't, it was a little over a year. I know they say you should discuss children before you get married. We didn't really discuss it that much.
Really?
We did not. I had never really pictured myself having children, to be totally honest. But I don't even know how I saw it, but I was watching this thing called Wednesday's Child, which is a program for foster to adopt or adoptions. And it was a young girl who was on. She was maybe like 15 years old. And, she looked a lot like me. I'm mixed race, I'm biracial. My mom is African American and my dad is Caucasian. And she looked a lot like me. And there was just something about her that really spoke to my heart. She said at the end, they asked her what kind of family she wanted. And she said, "I don't care. I just want somebody to care about me." And that just really sent me over the edge. So I said to my husband, I was like, "This is something I really want to do. I want her. I feel that she's going to be a part of our family." So he said, no hesitation, let's do it. So I had called her caseworker. They said, "Oh, this is all the stuff you have to go through. We can't put her on hold while you're doing the training and the certification process." So
Yeah.
we went through the certification process. I called her caseworker back when we graduated, and he said that she was already on hold. So I'm very happy that she found a family. But it was really devastating for me.
Sure.
So my husband said, "Let's try to have a baby."
Mm.
And I hadn't ever really thought about it. So I said, "Yeah, let's
Mm.
try to have a baby." And that's
So
how we got
how
to
did you
that.
feel about that when he expressed his want, I should say his desire for fatherhood to do it with you?
It surprised me a little just because we hadn't ever really talked about it. None of our siblings have kids,
Okay.
or at the time they didn't. My little brother has since done that, but yeah, it was a little surprising, but I felt like, okay, maybe this is the path we're supposed to be on. I
Mm-hmm.
knew ahead of time going in that we might have some difficulties. My mom is an OBGYN.
Okay.
Um, so I knew that fertility starts to drop off after 35. And at that
How old were
time,
you at this point?
37.
Okay. Okay.
I had had a pregnancy once when I was a teenager
Okay.
that ended itself. So it
Okay.
ended in a miscarriage. So I didn't really think that I would have any problems other than maybe we would need like a little assistance with maybe
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Clomid or Letrozole, something like that. I
Mm-hmm.
never imagined what was
Right.
going to
Right.
happen,
Right. Yeah. Which would lie ahead, right? But that's what they always say. What lies
right?
ahead. Yeah. Wow. 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 So, what did the process look like for you then? At this point, after you guys said you kind of mingled around with the idea, you talked more, you're thinking about like once you start thinking about it, you can't stop thinking about it, right?
I mean, I moved really quickly. I
Mm-hmm.
knew that, at my age group, you should try for 6 months. And then if you aren't successful, that you should go see a doctor. So originally, I got my IUD taken out. I'd had an IUD for 8 years. So, I mean, two, right? You can't keep them that long.
Mm-hmm.
But so I got my IUD taken out. We went on a trip to Iceland the next
Mm-hmm.
month. Um, and I got pregnant in Iceland that first month
Wow.
after I got the IUD taken out. It was crazy. I didn't know that I was pregnant
Okay.
and ended up having a miscarriage,
Mm-hmm.
which was incredibly shocking. At first, I thought, oh my gosh, I haven't had a period in a really long time, so I'm having this
Right.
really crazy, heavy period. But then I
Okay.
think maybe a couple of hours into it, I knew that that wasn't the case.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, so I had called my doctor and they said, you can take a test, but just to let you know, there's nothing we can do for you.
Right.
So I think that kind of started well, you think to yourself, well, I didn't know if I could get pregnant and now I know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that that was going to be the first of many losses.
Right.
I got pregnant again really quickly after that. And again, another miscarriage. And I have to apologize. I'm probably going to cry. I'm pretty raw. I just
No, no,
had
no,
my
no, no. I
last
understand.
miscarriage over Thanksgiving. So,
Right, right. I was just reading
yeah.
that for your intro. Yeah, for sure. I understand. Take your
Um,
time.
so, yeah, it was those two right in a row. And then I thought, you know, we're probably going to need some help.
Yeah.
So I went to my doctor. My doctor said everything looked fine. She put me on Clomid. We continued with timed intercourse and ovulation kits and all of that stuff and never got pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So again, having my mom knowing what I knew, I immediately went to an REI after that. But that whole process was about a year.
Wow, wow. And so at this point, you were still very sure that you wanted to continue trying to conceive, I guess, obviously, because you guys had set up your appointment with your REI and such. And so when you went to the REI specialist, did she have you go through the full workup, like, the normal HSG testing and all that?
Oh, yes, we did
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
And again, at this point, I'm not thinking all the way down this road, right? I don't think it's really
Mm-hmm.
possible to think all the way down the road, right? You
Mm-hmm.
start, you don't know what you don't know. And there's a
Exactly.
lot, even for someone who I thought was really educated about it, there
Mm-hmm.
is a lot.
Right.
Um, so we started on letrozole. We did some timed intercourse with Menopur.
Okay.
Um, we were not successful still.
Mm.
My HSG showed an abnormal fill on my uterus. So we did an SIS, the saline. I'm sorry. Should we go through all the acronyms?
Oh no, you're fine,
Okay.
girl.
So I did the saline
Yeah.
ultrasound,
Right.
and we saw that I had 2 fibroids. What I didn't know at the time was that 70% of African American women have fibroids. I didn't think, one of the fibroids was about 4 centimeters and was taking up a almost an entire portion of the wall of my uterus. So my doctor presented me with 2 options. She said you could get a myomectomy, either robotic or laparoscopic or open, to remove that fibroid, or we can try to do a hysteroscopy and just kind of scrape it down as much as we can to see if that helps. So of course I'm thinking, well, less invasive. I've gotten pregnant before, right? So we did that. Everything looked good after that. We did an IUI. It didn't work. We went back and did another SIS, and the fibroid was back. So I opted for another hysteroscopy, thinking again, hey, this can work. I know it can work. So we did another one, looked good, did another IUI, and it did not work. So then we were kind of faced with, okay, it's probably time to do the surgery. Looking back on it, of course, I would have done it sooner because, again, this takes an entire year, the process. So we opted for surgery before we did the surgery. Again, because of my age, I'm now 38 at this point, I think. Gosh, it's hard to remember. We went ahead and did stims and did an egg retrieval.
Okay.
So we ended up with 3 embryos, and I had them genetically tested, and 1 came back normal. So we're going to have that one on ice, thinking, after the surgery, we were going to do the transfer. Yeah. I think had I known at that time that, I think you kind of look at genetic testing as this like benchmark of things aren't going to go wrong, right? It's normal. It's tested.
It gives a lot of hope.
Had I realized that there number one is no guarantee, and number two that a genetically normal embryo doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to stay, right? That it's going to either implant or that you're going to take that pregnancy to term. I probably wouldn't have tested, to be totally honest, that time.
Okay.
But we did. So I had the surgery at the end of 2017, 2018, I think. And they actually ended up finding that I had 7 fibroids. Yeah, it was crazy. The largest of those fibroids was 7 centimeters. So like the size of a baby's head. And that was sitting on top of my uterus, so wouldn't have been able to be seen with the ultrasound. I think it was almost 2 pounds of fibroid that they ended up taking out of me. And my surgeon, bless her, she's amazing. She said she really took her time with being very careful with the walls of my uterus and the muscle. She did a fantastic job, but it took, normally it would take 3 months, they had said in the beginning, to heal. And for us to be able to do a transfer, it ended up taking 6 months. Yeah.
Whoa.
I know, right?
So, girl, my mom had fibroids, so I understand the devastation of it. And I watched her do it when I was in my late teens when she had hers removed, and she took some time to have them shrunken. She went to see a naturopathic doctor, and then had it removed to about your size by the time they had gotten shrunken. So she had the laparoscopic surgery. So I empathize with people with fibroids because it is no freaking joke. And as simple and as easy as the procedure sounds, it takes a toll on you, and it's just all around devastating, especially when you're talking about your womb, that sacred thing that we cherish so much. And so at this point, you had already had 3 losses then, including from when you were a younger adult.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so your 6 months goes by and you're healing. And were you still wanting to move forward with IVF transfer at this point?
Absolutely. We had a genetically normal embryo. And so I was ready. I was excited. It's funny, you keep these losses in your brain, but I think for me, my coping mechanism was almost to like put it in a box, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
have these other
Mm-hmm.
losses, and it's in order for my brain and my emotions to keep going and to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
I almost just I didn't really deal with them. I just
Mm-hmm.
put it in a little box in my head and put it off to the side. Um, and I think, of course, that probably wasn't the healthiest approach.
Yeah.
We ended up doing our transfer, and it's like the best thing in the world happens. You get the call that you're
Mm-hmm.
pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then in the next breath, but your numbers are very low. So
Mm.
we're really
Very
cautious
low.
about this.
Yeah.
And then, second beta they had dropped. And so you just know that you're not going to keep this pregnancy. And it
Yeah.
just, the box opens back up again, like
Yeah. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of those feelings kind of come flooding back on you.
Yeah.
Uh,
And when you describe your feelings coming back and your box opening with each loss that you experience, is it like a wave of emotion, like including all the first and then having more on top of it? To me, I imagine I've never experienced loss, so I always imagine it like a wave of emotions that overtakes you at different points and periods when you're feeling most vulnerable.
um, I think so. I think grief comes in waves anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really
Mm-hmm.
hard to tell. I just think like, I mean, it feels like a bomb goes off inside, or for me, it felt like a bomb went off inside of me, and I just it was like super hard for me to function.
Yeah.
I just it was hard for my friends to understand who hadn't gone through it. Um, it was hard for my husband to watch and feel like he couldn't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
So we grieved together, but obviously, like it's it's always different for
It's
the
always
person.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Because you carry it.
yeah. So it was really devastating. I think on top of that, at that time, that one cycle was all we could afford. So we were paying out of pocket,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like the end. It just feels
Yeah.
like,
Feels very final then.
yeah. A friend of mine put it a good way. Hope is a hard way to fall.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
all of my hope was in this one perfect embryo, and then when it didn't work, it was a very hard fall.
Yeah. Were you seeking mental health therapy at the time?
I actually did. My doctor had recommended someone who specialized in fertility. So
Okay.
I was speaking with her, and that was immensely helpful.
Mm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think the other thing was through this whole process, we've had a mantra.
Mm-hmm.
Sean has always said, whatever happens, we are going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
helpful just to know that, like, if it works out, if it doesn't work out, we're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You're gonna get through it together.
Yep.
You're not gonna have to do it by yourself, and you have a strong support system. And so we lose the embryo. It doesn't implant. And did you guys take a bit of a break at this point before moving forward with another IVF cycle?
We did. It was a forced break because we didn't have the money, but then I got a new job, which came with a fertility benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a lifetime benefit of $25,000 and a lifetime medication benefit of $10,000 on top of that. So,
Mm.
um,
Extremely helpful.
right, crazy
Extremely,
helpful.
yes, yes.
So I mean, it felt again like a sign. I know everybody, or not everybody, I won't say that. Most people get to that point, and I know you've talked about it on this podcast. One more time, one more time, one more time.
One more time.
So it felt like this was my meant to be one more time. So we were able to do another cycle. I got 6 embryos. We didn't test anything. At the end of the year, we did our first transfer of 2 embryos. And I had some bleeding in the 2-week wait, and I thought, oh gosh, it's happening again, or it's not going to happen. What? And I just told my husband, I said, we're out. It's okay. We'll be okay. You know. And then we did the beta, and it was really good. It was really high.
But did you, at any point during that time, did you ever think that it was going to be the twins?
I did
When you
not.
saw how high it was.
I
So
did
how
not.
was it? How was it that day they told you that it was twins?
It's so I had some bleeding in between when I was supposed to go get my ultrasound. It was like a couple of days before my ultrasound. I had bleeding, and so I was freaking out. You know, all that starts to come back. You think you're losing the babies or baby at that time. So we did an ultrasound that day, and that was when we found out it was twins.
Wow. So I know you guys were like just shocked and ecstatic at the same time, right? Like you felt like you had double blessing coming to you, right? For all the trouble that you had been through.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it one and done, but it kind of felt like we're done. That's it. We did it. We're done.
Absolutely. So everything was going okay these first couple of weeks being pregnant with the twins and everything?
Everything was going fine. Both of them were looking good. One was a little bit smaller than the other, but kind of to be expected sometimes with di twins. So, yeah, at that point we were given, or not, a couple weeks later after all of our ultrasounds, and we had, graduated from our reproductive endocrinologist. We were given something like a 5 to 8% chance of losing them. So very small.
Okay, so it's looking really good and everything.
But when we got to my OBGYN, we did an ultrasound, and the sonographer said, oh, the baby's looking good. And I said, baby? Because there's 2. And she said, I don't see a second one. So then we had to do a vaginal ultrasound, and she said, oh, here's the other baby. There is no heartbeat. So, I mean, again, it was just this incredible high. And, it's mere seconds for this incredible low. And again, I think I kind of went into shock a little bit, but also my brain got that box back out and put that baby in that box, because I had another baby.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's hard to emotions exist together, right? Like you can be happy and sad at the same time. You could be worried and excited at the same time. Grief and joy are really hard to put in the same space. So my brain just kind of put that grief in a box. And I think it was really needed, because for a vanishing twin, it's not like the baby has died and then it's just never talked about anymore. It was every appointment we had to measure both of them.
Exactly. Now, had you graduated from your RE and you were at your OBGYN when you got the... Okay. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was definitely a difficult thing to have to do. To just, it's every appointment. You're so excited to see your baby. You're nervous now because at this point, I think, anything can happen at any second. Statistics mean nothing when you're on the wrong side of them. So it was nerve wracking. My blood pressure in the office was always super high. You're just
worried all the time.
worried.
The anxiety is real. The anxiety is really, really high, and it's really real. Yeah, especially just having gone through all those losses before too, and then with the infertility, and then losing the twin and everything. So I definitely get it. I know everybody else will get it too and understand. And so, how was the remainder of your pregnancy then? And did you carry her to full term?
Well, so my pregnancy started right at the beginning of COVID. So my husband was not able to come to the anatomy scan or any scan afterwards. We were worried that he wasn't even going to be able to come to the hospital. It's so funny because as an older mom, you get that you're geriatric, advanced maternal age. They told us how at risk we were and how I had to have all these extra appointments and all of this stuff. COVID hits, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, we'll see you in 6 weeks. Bye. So it didn't feel as bad, right? I started out with like, you're so old, you're so dusty and old. And then ends up being, oh, well, okay, you're fine. So it was a little strange, but rest of the pregnancy was textbook. Sorry, my dogs are
Oh no, you're
barking. So the rest of the pregnancy was textbook. I did end up delivering at 37 weeks with a planned C-section because of the extensive surgery that I'd had for the fibroids. They were afraid for me to go into labor because of a uterine tear.
Yeah, that does make sense. Okay.
So we delivered at 37 weeks. She actually had some trouble breathing, so she was in the NICU the entire time we were at the hospital, which was also strange because, of course, because of COVID, we couldn't normally just be able to stay with them all the time.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Somebody is upset. Upset.
Of course, it's the little dog. So we couldn't see her all the time. We were only allocated a couple of hours a day to be able to go see her. But she's healthy. I know you know about being in the NICU. So, only 4 days is a blessing. Healthy.
Still long.
Still
the
long.
longest 4 days you will ever experience.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, any time frame is really bad. Moms being separated from babies.
Yes.
It's a nightmare.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Uh-oh.
She is really upset. Sorry.
It's okay, dear.
So yeah, healthy baby, all of that. But in the back of my mind, I am now 41. Even one of the nurses at the hospital, when I had her, was like, "Oh, I came out to the waiting room to get you, and I was expecting someone who looks so much older than you." It's like, please don't comment on my age right now. Thank you.
99. 41. It's like, come on, man. Give me a bit more credit than that. Jeez. They think they're going to see skeletons walking through the door.
Right. But it was in the back of my mind, if we want to do this again, and we did have 4 embryos left, that it was going to have to happen pretty soon.
Immediately.
Yeah. So I stopped breastfeeding earlier than I probably would have wanted to, just because, I was like, we got to do this again. I don't have time. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so how did hubby feel about moving forward? Was he okay with it, or was he scared for you? With the Black maternal rate being very high for complications during pregnancy and after delivery and during delivery.
I think he was nervous. He's always nervous about, every time I go into surgery. I think after one of the hysteroscopies, while I was still kind of loopy coming up, I said to him I didn't want to do this anymore. I don't remember that, but I think he's always a little bit nervous about it. I think, again, having my mom be an OBGYN is very helpful. She actually, I'd had a placenta accreta, which we didn't know about, where my doctor is a friend of my mother. So she actually called my mom afterwards to update her about what had happened. And so I think he had that as a comfort. And, so thankful that is a reality in our lives. But I think, again, it was, if we don't do it now, we're never going to get the chance to do it.
And so, are you still seeing your therapist and everything to help prepare you mentally as much as possible? And then also having a new baby too. It's like you're juggling so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Still seeing my therapist, still talking to my therapist about it. I think the new baby almost puts that level of hope, or it did for me, like way back up, because now not only did I know I could get pregnant and keep a pregnancy to term, she was like the shining example of what I could do. That it wasn't hopeless, that it was possible, and that my body could do it. And you have a greater chance of being successful once you've been successful once. According, again, with studies around infertility are few and far between, but there are, right? But there is data to suggest that that's true. So
I read the same.
So I went into it feeling like, okay, we're going to do this, and it's going to be great. So we did our first transfer earlier this year, and it was unsuccessful. And then we did our last transfer of 2 embryos again in October, and I did get pregnant. And it just felt kismet. I hadn't really thought about going back to having reoccurring losses. And then at the ultrasound, no heartbeat. Gestational sac was developed but small, and it was just, they pull you into that room and say, I'm sorry, and here are your options. And it was that hope was a hard way to fall. It felt like it's happening all over again,
Yeah. And then it does. So, unfortunately, Shelley's last BFP was miscarriage right before Thanksgiving, a month and a half ago, if that. So, I truly empathize with you and your husband, and I'm so sorry for your loss and your losses, because that would make number 6, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I think all together with the number of embryos, if you count just pregnancy losses and not just like miscarriages, that puts us at 8, I think.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot to carry, and that's a lot to have to work through too as well. And so, are you guys going to continue to move forward, or are you okay right now?
I'm doing my one more time. So since we don't have any embryos left, we're going to do, in the new year, we're going to do one more stimulation retrieval. Again, not planning on testing, and just we're going to go with whatever we got. I've been looked at my. Sorry.
No, go ahead, dude.
We've done some, looking at my uterus already to make sure fibroids aren't back. Because the reality is just because you have them surgically removed does not mean that you won't get any more.
Exactly. And buzzards can come right back buzzing. Yeah. And so, have you ever considered just stopping at this point?
It was definitely on the table. It was a discussion. Again, I'm older. I'm prone to more complications as an African American woman. So it's it's on the table. It's I think that's another grieving process you go through is to say
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think for secondary infertility, there's this idea amongst some people, and even some of my friends have said this. Shouldn't you be happy for the one that you had? Like, why would you go through all of this again? Um, and I think that you can be grateful for what you have and still want to have something else. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not looking to replace my daughter or any of the other pregnancies that I've had
Mm-hmm.
that haven't been successful. I'm looking to have another child. And this is the avenue for that. But I do
Mm-hmm.
realize that, there are some significant barriers to that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, we'll be fine. No
Mm-hmm.
matter what
Mm-hmm.
happens, we're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm willing to give it another shot. My husband's willing to give it another shot. I'm still actively in therapy to deal with my losses. And I think it's important to say that just because that's my path doesn't mean it's okay for everyone.
Right.
Um, I,
Exactly.
I don't think we say enough, it's okay to stop.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's, I think that there is a level of toxic positivity that's, if it could work for me, it can work for you. Look at, this is my miracle and this could be your miracle too. And really,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
scientifically, that's not true. People
Mm-hmm.
are people, they're different, protocols are different, underlying issues are different. Just because we're put in the box of maybe unexplained infertility or reoccurring losses or fibroids doesn't mean that
Mm-hmm.
everyone is this starting from the same place.
Right.
And I think that we need to kind of say to each other in the fertility community, like,
Yep.
it's okay. You
Mm-hmm.
have to make the best decision for you. If your one more time is three more times, that's the best decision for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you just want to stop, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
If,
Mm-hmm.
if it doesn't feel right, if you want to take a break, whatever it is, all of
Take the
those
damn break,
decisions are
friend.
good.
Take the break. Whatever you gotta do. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And breaks don't mean it's forever.
hmm Or it could be forever, right? I think
Yeah.
you
Either way.
have the right to change your mind at any time,
I
whether
like
you're
that. I
42
like that.
or
Mm-hmm.
you're 25, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you have the right to change your mind at any point during the process. And I think part of like I was very public in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted other people to see that, some people suffer through this. We're 1 in 8. Numbers could
Right.
actually be 1 in 6. Um, and it was amazing how many people ended up reaching out to me to say that they had
Mm.
some of these issues or they had had a loss that they weren't talking about. And I think it's important because we, as women, there are a lot of things that are taboo that we don't speak about that we should be.
Yeah.
Had I talked maybe with my friends more about how heavy my periods were, I would have
Mm-hmm.
known that I might have had fibroids.
Yeah. Maybe somebody would have nudged you,
Right.
or if they
Or,
had experienced it themselves or a family member or something.
right. I would have known it's not normal. The period that
Mm-hmm.
I was having was not like everyone else's
Mm-hmm.
period.
Mm-hmm. I
And
tell my
maybe,
sister that all the time because she has fibroids and they're huge. They're
mm-hmm,
humongous. I'm like, that's not normal, sis.
mm-mm,
It's not normal. And I said, having significantly painful periods is not normal. I've been telling her that for years. She's going to get help for it and everything, but it took a very long time to break her down, man. It took it took a really long time. I was like, that's not normal, sis. It's not normal. And I tell everybody, it's not normal to feel like that.
mm-hmm,
We have these symptoms, and because we've had them for so long, we think it's normal. It's not. And now that I think about it, I remember friends having like really painful periods as we were in adolescent years, and I'm like, And now I know so much about the medical side of our reproductive system. I'm like, that's sounding a little endometriosis to me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like, or somebody will tell me something now and I can say, that sounds a little bit like PCOS, and I might
Mm-hmm.
ask them if we're close. And I'm like, and I asked someone actually like earlier this year and I was right. And I was like, you have PCOS? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm not trying to diagnose you, girl. I'm not a doctor or anything, but I talk to a lot of people in the fertility space and doctors and specialists. And I was like, that sounds a little bit like PCOS. And she was like, yeah, I do have it. I was diagnosed as a teenager. It's like, all it takes, like you said, is a simple conversation amongst friends and family.
Mm-hmm. I think it's not easy to start these
Mm-mm,
conversations, right? It's not,
mm-mm,
and I think when you go public too, there's this idea that you want to talk about it all the time. So people that I don't know that well will ask me,
mm-hmm,
and it's hard to set that boundary to say, like, while I know that I've gone public, doesn't mean that I'm an open book all the time.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes I don't want to talk about it,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
that's okay, right? I
Absolutely.
have not been as public on this second in the secondary infertility space, and again, it's okay for that too, right? It doesn't.
Mm-hmm,
I'm not ashamed of it. It doesn't mean it's um, taboo for me. It just feels right for me and my family right now, um, not to talk about it, on my Instagram or something like that. But we do talk about it with our families. We do talk about it with our close friends. I would, I think, like to talk about it a little bit more in a social media platform. But again,
mm-hmm.
I'm not ready right now, so
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
to set my boundary.
yeah. That's totally understandable. And hopefully, if anybody is connected to you within the fertility space, they'll see this episode and then they will understand a lot more of why you're not sharing right now. Because I feel like when we're on these platforms, whether it's a private Facebook group or on Instagram or something like that, and we share, it's almost like we become invested in each other's stories. And so we kind of expect somebody to give us an update. And I think we have to, like, I have to remind myself. And then I always tell everybody else, she may not be ready or something like that, or whatever the case may be. And I think for the most part, we do a really good job of it. But it does get to the point where people are like really invested in your story and what's happening, and they feel like they deserve an update or entitled to an update when it's far from the truth. I share what I share when I want to share it. So I love that you said that because that was going to be my last question, and I think you really did a good job of what you want others to know in the community. And the first thing you said was knowing that it's going to be okay. You guys is a mantra that you guys use all the time. And then knowing that it's okay to stop or either go forward or whatever that looks like for you. So, is there anything else you would like for others in the community to know moving forward with their own story as you continually moving forward with yours too?
I think if you look for the resources that you need, you're going to find them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's not a ton. And again, I thank you for the work that you do, because representation is important. And seeing stories and hearing stories of people who are like you um, is important. And it took me a while really to find it. I know there's kind of this like stereotypical girl that you see on Instagram or whatever, and that's all I'm going to say. But um, I think if you need it, you'll find it. You just kind of have to comb through some other stuff, but um,
Yeah.
it's it's out there, and the more that we share these stories, the more out there it will become.
Yeah. Again, so very much for coming on today. I think it's really important for women of color who are choosing career or just life in general, and enjoying that for the long run and then having children later in life, which I think is truly possible with science today, as we already see. You're a prime example of that, and myself as well. And so I just can't say thank you enough for coming on here, especially right now as you're still in the midst of some very deep hurts and things. So I can't say thank you enough, girl. This was truly an honor to be able to host you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And thank you, friends, for tuning into Infertility and Me today. Peace and blessings.